Such a hard existence, isn't it? Being torn between using these kinds of music to, I really like that song, by the way. That's Limo Ride by Track Tribe from the YouTube audio library. I am so tempted to just walk away from the Game of Thrones inspired openers to my gaming streams and just use that with a dynamic opener. But I went to all the trouble to create a cinematic opener for Play Some Stuff, to make Elder Scrolls Online look more like Game of Thrones. And it's just, I went to all the trouble to create all that. And then these cool songs, I discover them on the YTAL. And I'm like, what did I do all that cinematic stuff for? I don't know. We'll figure it out some other time. What is up, everybody? This is Jay, aka MultimediaJay. Today, it is just about shy of 7 o'clock at the Geek House, and today we need to clear the air with a whole bunch of stuff that's been going on. At the same time, talk about a very important multimedia meta discussion when it comes to social media and your social media usage. Those of you that follow me on Twitter will know there's been a lot of crap going on with regards to content creators on social media and Elder Scrolls Online. Today, I basically played some Cyrodiil before I decided to do this discussion here. And I noticed the crap that people are complaining about. Cyrodiil should be this big medieval battle with siege weapons and the whole 9 yards, but the minute there's more than 5 or 6 players on the screen, the lag picks up, the frames start stuttering. I don't get why ESO streamers even bother with 60 FPS if they're PvP streamers, because the minute the engine just can't handle it. And it's one of the reasons why the devs have talked about how they're going to improve the server code that powers all of this, much in the same way they finally tweaked their engine so that multi-threaded rendering was a better thing, and we could stop getting at least, well, as much of the stuttering and the slowdowns we used to get with in certain parts of the world in ESO. But I used to, I got to see for myself what everybody's complaining about, and it's quite legit. I mean, when there is a gap between what something should blatantly, clearly be, say both the words if you can't figure out which one to say. When there is a gap between what the game clearly should be, what the vision is for the game, and what the technology is currently doing, that's worth mentioning. And it's also worth mentioning the speed at which these things come out. The stuff that multi-threaded rendering fixed in ESO was needed for years. I used to run technical stuff, testing with overlays and things like that. I used to do all of that while playing ESO and just marvel at how horrendously terrible Elder Scrolls Online was at using multiple cores in a processor versus Skyrim Special Edition, which made incredible use of multiple cores and had a 64-bit code base to boot. It was a wonderful upgrade for Skyrim that brought it into the modern era after decades of 32-bit Elder Scrolls games that kept crashing to the desktop. So originally, when ESO came out, one of the things people were making fun of it for was being a step backwards in terms of graphics versus Skyrim. And people were like, why do you have to dumb down the graphics in order to make an MMO? Why does every game have to copy World of Warcraft and have middle-of-the-road graphics to support lots and lots of systems instead of having something that scales more? Today, ESO scales a lot better than it did when I first started playing it, and, of course, even further back when it came out. It has TAA, it has DLSS, it has DLAA. If anything, it looks a little bit like it's time for a texture upgrade to the game to go along with the stuff that's going on, because sometimes it kind of looks weird, like particularly foliage and stuff like that. Leaves and foliage look a little like they're out of an old game, despite all the modern anti-aliasing and all the other cool stuff that ESO has these days. I mean, those screenshots that I soup up in Picasa that people like on Twitter and Instagram, that's really where you get to see what I see versus what you lose in the bit rate and stuff like that when you watch a stream because of technological limitations of the platforms. But I can tell you that live, looking at the game as is, there's some weirdness in the graphics that kind of makes it look like, imagine if you, for example, you took a Nintendo 64 game from 1996 and you upscaled it for today's TV. So it would look kind of weird with sharp, I'm sure there's people with emulators that have done this, But it looks weird when you have lots of sharp edges to everything. Everything looks nice, clear, in HD, and then the textures are from back in the 90s. So it's just, that's the world we live in when it comes to ESO. I mean, it's got its ups and downs like any other game. But the big thing that I'm concerned about, though, is just how it's the sleeper hit underdog of MMOs right now. Look at the big three. Here's the ESO directory right now, only bringing in 1,800 concurrents. And if we go back to what I posted earlier, that's not very far from the screenshot we've been passing around. Actually, it's less. And this is during prime time. This is during US East early evening prime time. Folks watching on the East Coast. Maybe it'll be different when there's, we get closer to like prime time in the middle of the country or the West Coast. But you're talking about less than 2,000 concurrents. Everything's low right now, but as always, Elder Scrolls Online is dead last out of these three major MMOs that have work being done on them currently based on major IPs. And this is what I was ranting about last time with the whole /lurk situation. And of course, I am of the very stern opinion that corporate needs to reel him in big time and pull the reins on him before he continues to make Elder Scrolls Online look terrible. Because when the game is in such an underdog state as it is in right now, it doesn't need to be made to look any worse because of the behavior of people in leadership positions with the game. Since then, I've noticed that /lurk has taken a break from social media, citing a lot of stuff going on right now. I hope some of that involves management at ZeniMax and ZeniMax Online, bringing him up to speed on just what his actions on social media can do to the brand. I get corporate on purpose like this because these are games that are run by large companies. The people that are in leadership positions in these companies should know what is expected of them and what is expected in terms of behavior. All three of these companies should have social media policies, but I wonder about the HR staff at ZOS when stuff like what's been going on is going on. Now, here's a guy, practically, if he flies the flag that he's a big, developer for ESO, and then he acts the way he does, whines at players who complain about problems in the game and stuff like that, bans them, and then the situation with his wife was pretty awful. But anyways, I think I might have come across as maybe a little too rough last go round, and that's one of the reasons why tonight we need to talk about this whole idea of personal social media. Folks, if you watch nothing else or listen to nothing else in this discussion, understand this. The 2020s will destroy personal social media as we've known it forever. You can't have personal social media anymore. You can't have just a personal Twitter. You can't have just a personal Twitch stream. It is the whole social media scene as we know it is changing so that social media by default is public. And if it wasn't social media that did this, the wired smartphone culture we live in today, with phones and phone cameras getting better and better, and better broadband, better data plans, better ways for if you have a meltdown in the grocery store because they're out of ground beef, someone can bust out their phone and make you go viral. That's only going to be more and more of a possibility as the technology continues developing. Let me tell you a little something about smartphones. The cameras in smartphones are getting good enough to displace lower-end cameras you used to have to buy specifically for taking pictures. And smartphones can take Bluetooth, and there are a bazillion Bluetooth accessories out there that allow you to be a YouTuber with a smartphone, a live streamer with a smartphone. And this, as is the case with multimedia and audiovisual stuff, the prices keep dropping, the secondhand gear keeps getting better. The world is turning more and more into a place where it is so wired, and anybody can make you anybody can take you viral if you misbehave in public. Everybody has smartphones. They have screen grabbers. There's share buttons on your consoles. I wonder if that includes like the YouTube app. If you're watching YouTube videos and hit share to record a clip, that might be a DMCA issue. But there are ways for what you are doing physically and on the internet to be recorded, documented, and used against you. So behave yourself. Take Twitter. Twitter, that bastion of trolling where everyone's like, ratio. And, oh, I can hide behind a sock puppet account. I can do all this. I can do that. Or I can be a content creator with a hidden Twitter where I talk about my real thoughts. It's my personal space. No, it isn't. It's public facing. And Twitter is designed such that you cannot have like a Facebook experience on it. Because if you lock your tweets, people are going to be like, why are they locking their tweets? Did they say something bad? Because Twitter by design encourages toxic behavior. And it is the platform that sets the not so gold standard for how you design a social media platform to encourage negative behavior. It's exactly the sort of thing that the rest of the social media world needs to take a very close look at and not replicate, which is why I'm disgusted that Facebook has done some of that, to where if you delete your post when some people are flaming you, all that disappears is your comment or whatever. And everything else, like, oh, the comment that this is responding to has been deleted. Cool. So now one of the worst things of Twitter can now come to Facebook. Congratulations, Facebook. You failed. So here's the thing with Twitter, though. Twitter already was a cesspool of toxicity. So just to give you an idea of just how much the design alone of Twitter encourages you to be toxic towards others. Not only, you can flame someone and they can block you, but your tweets will still be visible. And if you keep going back to your tweet and responding to it, you can just make a giant wall of tweet responses that and there's nothing the person blocking you can do about it. Then there's the whole privating your tweets. A lot of times when people private tweets on Twitter, it means something bad happened. So if you have a private account, people are going to assume there's something bad there. In lots of people, I should say. Maybe the people that don't know about how all this works won't, and that'll be the only break you get. But for the most part, being anything other than public little micro blogs, which is what it was originally made for in the first place. That's what tweets were originally formally referred to as, micro blogging. Twitter is the place where negativity is so easy and people can just bandwagon against somebody. That's why it's known for things like Twitter mobs and trolling on Twitter. That's why Twitter is such a disaster when it comes to people being civil to one another. You can, use it. You can make sock puppet accounts. You do all kinds of other stuff. Maybe, the Twitter staff will suspend your account if you cross some kind of line somewhere. But by and large, with the things I see people tweet about and the toxicity that usually breaks out whenever anybody says anything that's making an assertive statement on Twitter, time and again, I see things just go downhill really, really fast. That is a design problem. Now, that's the starting point, though. Twitter already was not the place where you'd want to bury, your negative hot takes or whatever, because people could always search for you and find your old tweets that make you look terrible. Just punch the right keywords into advanced search and you can find any kind of crappy stuff people have said about others or games or whatever. Twitter is incredibly searchable, but then Twitter had to take what they already had, which is awful, and introduce algorithms to it all. There are some people that I have blocked because I just don't want to see their crap that the algorithms introduced me to, because I showed interest in like Elder Scrolls Online. Someone was whining about something, and I'm like, I don't want anything to do with this person. Bam, gone. So you don't even have to try anymore. Something nasty you write on Twitter can be someone else's first impression of you. And let's not forget, Twitter is not the only platform that's algorithming up, so to speak, chasing after YouTube in this direction. Twitch is as well. Twitch has redesigned their very robust left panel to have more algorithmic features in there to introduce you to similar streamers based on what you've watched and other stuff like that. So you can be introduced to somebody by watching somebody else who's stylistically similar, or in some way the algorithm thinks you'll be interested. And next thing you know, your lower left menu is going to populate, and you're going to be able to watch various streamers that you may never have heard of before. But hey, the system thinks you'll like them, so bada bing. And then we get to what introduced me to the slash lurk problem, which is YouTube's king of the algorithms issue themselves. So YouTube may not have the most robust game directory service in the world, but the game directories left over from the old YouTube gaming, you can save the links to them. And the easiest way to get to one of them is to search for a game on YouTube. And then if there's a directory, an auto-generated directory page, it'll be off in a box on the right. You click that, you go to the directory. You will see a mix of YouTube gaming live streams, recent videos, let's plays, what's popular, and what the algorithms think that you'll like. And you can see individual videos that way. This system on YouTube is how I was introduced to not only the /lurk situation, but /lurk himself. I never even knew he was a streamer until I went looking at Elder Scrolls Online. I see a thumbnail, ZeniMax is triggered, and that introduces me to the footage. And of course, you know, you can make a YouTube video look like anything. You can put things out of context. You can put your own spin on it, So I went past all the subjective crap, and I found the VOD on Twitch, where all of that stuff happened with the guy getting banned for asking, oh, why are we walking on our weapons after years while the Crown Store is fixed like that? Oh, it's all about money, 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 isn't it? You pepper the Crown Store with microtransactions while bugs remain unfixed for years. I found out about that because of YouTube. Because someone made a YouTube video with the clips from the VOD, but I was actually able to go dig through, find the VOD, and see what happened in its full context in and of itself, and that made it worse. This guy has gone viral twice in the last month. Not good timing when Elder Scrolls Online is about to have a big announcement later this month for what the next chapter of the game, this maritime thing they're teasing, is going to be about. So think of it from a corporate perspective. You have, put it back on the screen, you have a sleeper of an MMO that is paling badly versus two of its competitors, even though, give me my pointer, even though it has a follower count on Twitch roughly the same size as Final Fantasy. Yeah, I mean, yeah, WoW is still by its own inertia massive, but there should be, I mean, ESO and Final Fantasy should be competing with each other. It shouldn't be the case that Final Fantasy is the darling game for people that have aught against World of Warcraft or want a different MMO. And I know there's style differences in play here. ESO is very Western and kind of D&D-like. Final Fantasy is more anime and stuff like that. I was joking last night about the whole cat girl thing. I was like, oh, you can actually make a female Khajiit in Elder Scrolls Online with really big anime eyes. Just that a female Khajiit's going to look like a Khajiit, not like, you know, anime girl with cat ears. So it's just, there's stylistic differences. And yeah, Elder Scrolls Online tends to be more of a grown-up game. I've had a better experience, even in PvP, last night on the Care Bear campaign that doesn't allow proc sets. So all the, you know, ponage people and whatnot that want to own everybody and not achieve objectives in Cyrodiil, they just want to basically turn Cyrodiil into a gigantic dueling map. all of those people that want to do that, you know, they're all out there with the proc sets and all that. And I'm like, let's go to the Care Bear campaign. It was mostly Ebonheart Pact versus Daggerfall Covenant. The Covenant was actually making progress with all those night shift people taking objectives, and they were a cool bunch of people to play with. They were talking to each other in chat. They were being friendly. They were probably the friendliest PvPers I've ever run into in any game up to this point. It was like a casual dungeon run. Of course, it's a Care Bear campaign, not the one that people are the most competitive in, but I mean, competition tends to breed toxicity. So if I go to the Care Bear campaign where there's no champion points or proc sets, I can probably find people that are a little less wound up. Instead of people crying in the zone chat, stop doing quests, we're not getting anywhere because da-da-da-da-da. Or, you idiots, you're all there at that one keep and these other people are taking everything else. Yeah, it's called armies can be stretched too thin, especially with Cyrodiil having its population problems right now. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the things you can do for yourself to make yourself feel better in life, learn to not be upset so much at stuff that's just happening anyway. But yeah. So yes, the people that are upset about PvP and ESO have a good darn point. There's a huge difference between what Cyrodiil should be and what it is. And I think there could be some more tweaking as well, particularly for the people that aren't as keen on the PvP, to get more people in on the action, or at least seeing what everything is. I mean, one of the intimidating things that keeps people from getting into PvP is they think they're going to run into all the people that are going to play video games 15 hours a day, and they're going to get stomped. Now, despite the fact that Elder Scrolls doesn't have quite the gear gap that World of Warcraft had in its when it was terrible and whatnot, where you get people with a bunch of arena and battleground gear and they'd crush you because of all the specialized PvP stuff you could get. Despite there not being, a whole PvP is always the best thing, and you can be creative with PvE gear and stuff like that and put together a build, and well, the nickname of Guild Wars, Build Wars. Despite all of that, I mean, I talk about, for example, the Care Bear campaign, where at your base camp you can declare your neutrality and then just go around doing quests without people, messing with you. That way you can actually see, if you wander past a siege battle, you can see what it's all about and see if it's interesting to you and maybe get in on it later. The big reason why I support this idea, though, is to get all the people that want to do quests and delves and stuff out of the campaigns where it's people trying to take keeps and stuff. So that way they're not taking up spots on teams. If Cyrodiil's population problem is fixed, you're going to run into issues with PvEers doing delves and other stuff in there. So you might as well have something where, okay, if you're in this campaign, there's probably going to be a lot of people that are not really doing much with keeps because they're there for achievements, sky shards, delves. They like Cyrodiil despite its current state in the game, whatever. There's going to be that going on. But anyways, so the PvP folks who are upset about what Cyrodiil is versus what it could be, they do have a point. Some of them enunciate it, or should I say talk about it, better and more politely than others. But when you get to a certain point in an organization, like creative director, when you get to a certain point in an organization in large companies, there comes a point where you can no longer have like, oh, this is just my personal thing. You can't do that anymore. You will become indistinguishable from what you made or oversee or manage. Here's a great example. Those of you who follow me on Twitter know that I was watching The Price is Right on the internet earlier this evening. I was like, hey, I'm old. I'm watching The Price is Right on CBS's website. The reason why I did that was I just wanted to make sure that Drew Carey is keeping the old Bob Barker tradition alive. At the end of every show saying, help control the pet population, have your pet spayed or neutered. Now, that was a big Bob Barker thing. He was the one that was passionate about, animal welfare and stuff like that, or should I say, controlling the pet population. And it became a meme, this is Bob Barker reminding you to help control the pet population, have your pet spayed or neutered. He retired from the show years and years and years ago, but Drew Carey is still doing it. Why? Out of respect for the traditions and stuff that Bob Barker established. It started out as a personal viewpoint of the host of the show. Now it is ingrained within the show as kind of a tradition that the show always does. It started as a Bob Barker thing. It's now a Price is Right thing, no matter who hosts it. I think if Drew Carey retired, the next host would probably do that too. Heck, the studio's named after Bob Barker. I think it's kind of just, if it's Price is Right, you're going to hear about controlling the pet population. It is so ingrained at this point. And that's television. That's probably the biggest example in terms of who's the most famous that I can think of for this whole idea that once you get past a certain point in terms of fame, organizational status, management, whatever, you cannot have, oh, this is just my personal view. You will always reflect what it is that you are involved with, even if you're not on company time, so to speak. Let me give you another great example, and just to kind of a what if to get the gears turning for you folks. You're talking about situations where when you get past a certain amount of, when you get up to a certain level in an organization, you really can't separate yourself from what it is you're involved with. What you say and do will reflect on it merely because of your involvement there. Let's say, Dave Thomas, founder of Wendy's. Before he passed away, he was doing commercials and stuff when I was growing up. You'd see him in a few commercials here and there. Remember his smiling face on TV. Also, by the way, Dunkin' Donuts with Fred, the guy, time to make the coffee, time to make the donuts. You can probably look up these old commercials on YouTube if you really want to do some digging. I'm sure somebody has uploaded them at some point, with how YouTube often ends up as the world's VCR. That in and of itself is a dated reference, I know, so think DVR instead. So, here's the thing. If, say, some of these big figureheads in advertising, Dave Thomas, Wendy's, Fred with Dunkin' Donuts, in a more modern era, we can talk like Flo from Progressive, the Allstate guy, or have a what's-her-face doing the AT&T commercials these days. Now, if one of these figureheads in these commercials suddenly decide to become be involved in radical politics of sorts, very polarizing stuff, that runs the risk of getting the company or the product branded as a certain political bent, like some companies that are known for being more conservative are right now, where they're known as conservative companies because of the leadership philosophies of the management. Again, things with people, personal views by people, becoming institutional views of the organization. So, if one of these big figureheads in advertising decided to become radicalized like that, and they started mouthing off about stuff, not even in the commercials, but it became very well known they were out doing all this, that, and the other. You really think the brands wouldn't step in and consider retiring them as a spokesperson? I know that happens because it's happened in my day. So it's happened in the world of tech, my own backyard. Dell dude Steven. That's the AIM bot, but it was for the AIM chat bot, but it was for the spokesman for Dell in the 2000s. Steven, the Dell dude. Dude, you're getting a Dell. Back in that decade, smoking marijuana was considered still something illegal and something not good in the mainstream culture. So I believe he was, busted for marijuana, and then he stopped being the spokesman afterwards. Brands will step in if individuals involved that can reflect on the brand do something that's out of line. And so that's why we're here today to say, among other things, you really shouldn't even think that you can have a personal social media anymore. It's an obsolete idea. The world has changed too much. Many forms of social media these days are public. You'll meet people through them. You might even make friends through them that you never meet in real life. But the idea of, I can be one way as in my job and another way on social media, ancient history. Forget it. It's not going to work. The world is too wired. People are going to find out. And then what? Remember, where's the phone? And remember, you can go viral at any time because of these things, or because of screen grabbers, or because of other things people have nowadays. That's very easy to get, doesn't require very much specialized hardware in order to do or run. But yeah, the idea of personal social media, forget it. I mean, here, you got to consider how the world has changed since the MySpace days. I called it the e-shrine back then. Facebook was like this too in the 2000s and the 2010s. When Facebook took over everything, there's basically a personal e-shrine. The page would be about you as a person. You'd make some friends. MySpace in particular, it was mostly people you knew. The whole idea of collecting friends that you never met kind of became a thing with Facebook, maybe late MySpace, but definitely during the Facebook era. But even then, what the platform was about was you. You might limit who you interact with because you didn't want to be talking to strangers. There was no, I'm trying to build an audience. There was none of this stuff with that. But then the public-facing social medias like YouTube and Justin TV and everything that has succeeded all of that became a thing. And so today, you have people that are so used to what we have nowadays that they think that the old rules can apply on a platform that is not designed for it. Like the people that have social media gaffes on Twitter, including game developers. And they say, well, that's just my personal Twitter. And maybe there's people out there that'll make excuses for that. But your personal Twitter is not like a MySpace page back in the day, especially if you're flying the flag that you work for a certain company and that you are involved in like a major video game or a news organization or whatever. It reflects on you and it reflects on the people you're involved with. It is increase and decrease by association. It is the whole, watch who you're friends with and who you associate with thing, but it's just that. Versus you just spout off whatever to your friends and it never matters because all that's in your little friend group is your friends. No, Twitter, by default, it's public and yearns to be public by its design. If you have a private Twitter, it is an adverse thing when people wonder what you're hiding in it because Twitters are usually public. Twitter is also very searchable. Now it has algorithms, things along those lines. Nobody should be thinking they can have a personal Twitter anymore. Nobody. Not going to work. You're either barely going to post anything because you know about all this stuff, and so it's not really going to really represent you all that well, or you're going to screw it up and you're going to post something you shouldn't. And it's going to reflect on you. It's going to reflect on your job. It's going to reflect on your company. It's going to go all over the place because people love making big deals out of stuff. It's just, no, it's impossible. The platform was designed to be public. It is a blogging platform, just with a character limit. It was originally called microblogging and has stayed true to what it was made to be. It is not, oh, I have this off meta, so to speak. I have this off meta thing I want to say that doesn't line up with what I normally do on the internet or at work professionally. So I'm going to put it on Twitter. No, do not put it on Twitter. Don't put it on Twitter any more than you would put it on your LinkedIn. Don't put it on Twitter any more than you would put it on your LinkedIn. Forget it. How about YouTube? This is one that I have a major beef with people that aren't as tech savvy, because they're putting pictures, they're turning on kids mode. So yeah, a lot of features are turned off and saying every video is made for kids. And then they're making videos of like their kids like swinging on the swings and stuff. It's home movies because it's you, and they do it on YouTube. And I'm like, no, use Facebook on that. Limit the visibility to just your friends and whatnot, and do Facebook video instead of YouTube, because YouTube is inherently public. It's about, making a channel and building something up. It defaults to public, just like Twitter does, whereas Facebook still has something where, I just have a personal Facebook account. But what are you going to do with that personal Facebook account, especially when personal versus persona social media start to clash with each other, which is the state Facebook is in right now. Oh yeah, I have my personal Facebook account with like 20 friends or whatever, most of whom don't even use it anymore or even talk to me. Now, I've had it since 2005. It's a family, friends, people from college kind of thing, because Facebook was originally a college yearbook site. Ugh. But Facebook, with its omni-media capabilities, especially if it works on its video technology and getting better quality video available on its platform versus YouTube, is going to become that YouTube competitor we've all been waiting for if they make a few design changes. They have the stuff for it. Whether they will do it or not is up to them. Or whether they will get too wrapped up in this metaverse stuff that they really leave that potential on the table and YouTube continues thriving is up to them. But, my personal Facebook, let me tell you, I'm kind of an outcast in my own family. I'm used to not being popular. I've been the unpopular nerd for decades, going back to my school days. It is not a problem or anything under wild and crazy for me that my videos don't get views, my streams don't get concurrence most of the time, and other stuff like that. I am used to being unpopular. What bothers me, though, is when you think that family and friends would be more understanding of you than the general public, or people that know you offline will be more understanding. But instead, no, I'm the weird nerd on Facebook. I can't talk computers on Facebook. Half the people aren't going to give a darn. I can't talk gaming on Facebook. Half the people aren't going to give a darn about that either. Sad that my dad's that way too. He played Atari. He used to brag about how, oh yeah, son, you're better at me at Nintendo, but if this were an Atari, I would be smoking you. Like Pac-Man or Berserker. How about Combat on the Atari 2600? His gaming years were contemporary to Pong machines and stuff with joysticks. So, I'm very surprised though. But yeah, I'm the lone wolf in a lot of ways. Also, I have a lot of relatives who are into like conspiracy theories and stuff, and I don't agree with them. But so my personal Facebook account, and by extension, my personal social media existence on the internet, has one foot in the grave, pretty much. Then there's LinkedIn. Okay, make a LinkedIn profile. I've had it for 10 years now, since the 2012 layoffs. What has it done for me? It's never done anything good for me. It's just given me another thing to stress out about. And now I get to have my professional colleagues seeing me stress out about stuff instead of family and friends. Because a couple of people that I've worked with over the years added me on LinkedIn. Never did anything afterwards, but they at least clicked the button. So what has LinkedIn ever done for me? It's just, Yeah, LinkedIn. Do it if you're a professional. Other than an online resume, I think it's useless. You could make videos professionally, but if you're already involved in a personal platform and whatnot, then why bother? Especially when LinkedIn has a length limit, last I checked. Plus, if you're going to make things professional and you already have a full setup for something like this, you're basically guaranteed to have what you do on LinkedIn be super boring. So, no, personal social media has just been less and less and less of a thing, while persona social media, MultimediaJay, has become more and more and more. And that's something I've had to figure out for 2022, especially with that overcrowded socials bar I keep showing on stuff like this. Now, that's a lot of socials, but how many of them am I realistically using? YouTube, Instagram for game screenshots of all things, Twitter. Let me remind myself what's on there again. Oh yeah, and WordPress. Not really doing anything with Twitch, not really doing anything with TikTok. It's because of Twitch has problems, and I can't think of anything to do on Twitch besides Amazon Prime watch parties. And then there's TikTok, which has algorithm false positive problems where people are getting banned for no reason because some robot bans them for something that it thinks is inappropriate. Something that we've seen on other sites chasing after YouTube before. So, yeah, I just can't think of anything really to do with them. But it's still bigger than it was back when I was just doing YouTube. I have more options, more things to do, more stuff I can work with. All the platforms have their ups and downs. But what they all have in common is they're all public facing. They're all MultimediaJay type stuff. They're not something I'd really want to use for anything personal either. So, and that's part of, understanding what it is that's part of, understanding what specifically I'm about and keeping things focused on that. Multimedia, presentations, technology, video games, the flashier side of technology that I'm traditionally into. That's what this stuff needs to all be about. I can't suddenly, hey, I'm taking up crocheting and I'm knitting now. That's what my YouTube channel's about. People are going to think I'm on drugs. It's just so here we are in a situation where, MultimediaJay is a thing. Play some stuff. I brought the name back because it has pull search engines. So you get results if you search for it. Mostly old videos from a while ago, but want to fix that with the streams and everything so people can easily find, the stuff I'm working on. Wacky World of MultimediaJay has a little something going as well for any hardware projects I want to do. I think I'm in a pretty decent spot. Just got to make stuff more consistently, get better equipment so it looks better, and work on my skills so it's a better experience overall, which is an ongoing thing when you're involved with this stuff. But without me even needing to go beyond my own experience here, anecdotal evidence, I know, personal social media is just something that's been withering and withering and withering. And why would I want it? Most of my family doesn't have the same interests that I have. Most of my friends aren't into the same stuff that I'm into. And people are just becoming less and less trustworthy nowadays in general. And then there's the whole thing of what if your account gets compromised? That's another thing entirely. So now people are going to get viruses or something because your account got compromised or something. But just, no, personal social media, we got to get away from it. So, okay, so the MySpace era came and went, as well as social media being designed around that stuff working, making a little personal e-shrine, look at me, I'm an awesome person. And then mostly your family and friends look at it. Ancient history, forget it. Everything's public facing. Stuff like, make a name for yourself, build something for yourself. And you really can't use it for personal stuff because, your audience might think you're weird if you go off on a tangent or something like that. Even if you're someone like me who traditionally has lots of different interests, you got to factor that in, though, to what it is that you're doing when you're talking like content strategy and stuff. But the bottom line is most of the social media you're going to get involved with these days, especially the popular platforms, are inherently designed for like public stuff, building an audience. It's not the sort of thing where you're going to be like, oh, this is just my personal social media. It's not a good idea to have that anymore because the world has moved on from it. I mean, just people really don't care about you. They care about what you bring to the table. Employers don't care about who you are. They care about what skills you have and what your attitude is and, what you'll bring to a team that you are on. Now, and this utilitarian view of people is worth considering as something bad that we really got to take aim at in society, lest we reduce all the human beings around us to just things we use up and throw away. It's a very narcissistic view on our fellow human beings. So, I mean, you need to have some friends somewhere. You can't just be viewing people as, this person does this for me and that person does that for me. But on a small, tight-knit friend group, I mean, how big of a clique do you really need? Especially when the human brain is inherently limited in how many real relationships a person can have. Now, choose your friends wisely, yeah, because you can't have too many of them to begin with without slacking off on some of them. But when it comes to social media, you got to understand the bulk of social media these days is designed to be public and to be something you build up into an online presence. And it can't just be personal stuff anymore. You have to understand the public nature of social media these days. Fundamentally, since social media wants to be public, the public nature of social media these days means you can't hide anything on it. You can't be one way on Twitch and another way on Twitter. That's a classic example I bring up with a lot of these smaller streamers that stunt their growth and they're wondering why. How come such and such creator is bigger than me? No, or they might even make YouTube videos about it. Now they just do they do this crap and like, oh. But I mean, if you're different on different platforms, people are going to see that, they're going to scratch their head, and most importantly, it's a thing where you're going to have a situation on your hands where if you have drawbacks and somebody else doesn't, that other person gets all the traffic. So it's a different world than it was. If you still get the idea that you can have a personal social media, get rid of it. It is going to reflect on you. It's going to reflect on your friends. It's going to reflect on your family. Toss this idea into the garbage heap of history because the world is just too wired. No, unless you live in some cabin somewhere and you never see anybody and never go on the internet, your privacy is, forget it. You basically have to, you could be on TV at any moment without even, needing to be the reason why it's happening. And let's suppose, you're minding your own business, again, with the whole supermarket analogy. You go to do your grocery shopping. Some moron who's had a few too many things to drink, you go and you push your cart around, all of a sudden, boom! Big SUV plows through the window of the supermarket, and it's now where the cash registers used to be. Fortunately, the cashiers saw the big thing coming, and they ran out of the way, so it only smashed a bunch of cash registers. But now the news media is on scene filming B-roll for their story, and you might show up in it. Well, congratulations! Without even trying, you're now on TV. The reporters might interview you. You gotta be ready for your cameras. You might not have makeup on. You might not be particularly good looking or whatever. You might be a fat guy like me. I don't know. But hey, you could be on TV at any moment. Or maybe someone's live blogging or something like that. And, they have like the hidden cameras or something and they really don't care who they record. And the platform hasn't lowered the boom on them for invading others' privacy. You can end up in someone's vlog or in someone's live stream or in whatever. So that's the world we live in. You can't really pretend you have privacy with a society this wired, when anybody could be bugged or anybody could bust out a camera. And don't forget the consent laws wherever you live, whether it's a one-party consent or two-party consent rules for certain types of communication. And if you have a state like Connecticut where phone calls are two-party but everything else is one-party, I'll have to check and see if that's changed since then. You have that to think about as well. But if you really have to think about how you represent who you are, who you associate with, your family, your friends, your colleagues, people you work with. It's impossible to have any kind of social media presence these days without having to think about that kind of stuff. Unless you just don't know, then you make dumb mistakes like this whole slash lurk situation. Speaking of which, I think I might have been too hard on the guy because I went looking at his LinkedIn. Not hard to find. Typical, I have social medias for everything. So wasn't hard to find. And I noticed there was a very notable gap in his resume. I didn't see any alma mater on there. I do some more digging. I find out he started his gaming industry career as a tester for EA in the 1990s. I think it's EA Canada or something. And it started out as a job between semesters. So this could be a guy with some college, and he built a career for himself. And got himself promoted up to creative director, but he's a some college kind of person. Meanwhile, I'm over here with a 4-year business degree, been doing multimedia type stuff since shortly after I graduated. I pay attention to stuff like what's going on with influencers and content creators and the development of YouTube and the development of Twitch and the development of Twitter. I pay attention to all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of a thing I nerd out on a regular basis, such that I'm usually in thinking of it a lot, similar when I go about my business. And of course, I'm old enough to be somebody's crazy gaming uncle. I am an NES, SNES generation, N64 generation elder millennial. But when all this fancy lighting came out, I thought it looked cool, so I got it. Got some ring lights I could play with. But I know full well there's going to be some young, handsome hotshot that'll get more viewers than me, or there's going to be some pretty girl that's going to get more viewers because they're young and beautiful, and I'm a fat guy with gray hair. So this is the way it is. I know there's photogenic stuff involved with this kind of stuff. It goes back to Kennedy-Nixon 1960, the infamous television debate that made TV into something that mattered in a U.S. presidential election. The video of which is also on YouTube if you go digging for it. Kennedy-Nixon debate 1960. And see one of the key moments in television history when TV started influencing politics based on how good people were in front of the camera. So, yeah, I'm over here with all of this, following all of this, formal business background in large companies in the offline world. And I keep that, quiet because I keep that quiet out of respect for the folks that I've worked for over the years, even the bad ones. I call it the 9 to 5 or work or some generic term. I don't brag about where I work or what I do. So I have talked about, the data analyst stuff that I've done before and the PC hardware support that I've done before. But by and large, I'm out in the woods. There's not much out here except warehouses. So, those kinds of opportunities are few and far between. I'd have to move to some place more built up to do more consistent tech stuff. And here's the fun part. Because of all these warehouses struggling to staff up, driving a forklift around here sometimes is more lucrative than doing entry-level computer support. I was laughing at some of the wages that I've seen for and even some of the embellishment of some of these entry-level IT positions that people need around here for computer and, in the case of retail, point of sale support. And I'm seeing that you are called I say jokingly, but you are referred to as an IT manager when you're really just the IT guy for a small business. They try to stroke your ego while paying you less per hour than stacking boxes on pallets and loading trucks. What a wonderful world we live in. The warehouse wild card is back. It messed with me 15 years ago, and I thought it was dead with the minimum wage increases. But now, look what's back. As well as, the devaluing of tech work in general. Computer people and IT people are treated like garbage. They're treated like disposable contractors. Sometimes they're laid off and then rehired as contractors. They have to join a tech services firm, which is basically being a contractor. You don't get to be a real member of the team if you know computers. Then why is there so much identity theft these days? Why does technology have so many problems all these days? I wonder. Could it boil down to the way you treated the human beings with all the brains that know how to do stuff with the stuff that you have? Different discussion. We'll save that for some other time. But yeah, you got to be professional. You have to be professional about what it is that you do. And so, but at the same time, I got to realize there's a big difference between me and this /lurk guy. He may not even have the background to even know any of this. The reason I was looking on his LinkedIn, I wanted to see if he had a marketing background or a business background or anything that I could say, look, he has this background, but he's still acting weird on stream like this. And I couldn't find it. His background is in testing games, developing games, working on video game development related projects. Very, very narrow. So I need to, realize, and so should you, by the way, that when this guy acts all bizarre like this and goes viral in the YouTube ESO directory for disrespecting the paying customers known as ESO players, he may very well not have the background to understand the consequences of his actions. He just might be legitimately dumb about this stuff. And that's why I'm hoping that someone at ZOS or ZeniMax has pulled him into a meeting somewhere and just brought him up to speed very, very quickly on what he's doing. And if he can't keep it professional on his Twitch streams, he needs to stop the Twitch streams. simple, because what he's high enough in the org as creative director that what he does will reflect on ESO no matter what. He's in a similar position to the Ian Hazakostas of the world and the Ghost Crawlers of the world over on the WoW side of things. Those celebrity game devs, people know their name and they associate them with the game no matter what their personal views are. It's a culture that built up during WoW's dominance. It now is a thing with other MMOs. Gina Bruno, by the way, is in the same position. Jessica Folsom probably too, with although maybe not as much. You know, it's Gina Bruno's name that I keep hearing over and over again, but she got promoted as senior community manager now. But and the thing too, don't forget, by the way, I did some digging on ZeniMax Online, because I remember when Elder Scrolls Online first went into development that ZOS, as we know it today, was a studio made specifically to turn to turn Elder Scrolls into an MMO. There's some crossover issues with Oblivion and Skyrim and ESO because of the development timetables of the 3 games. There are some things that made it into Skyrim that weren't as polished in ESO because of when both of those games started development. But it's easy because of ZOS. It's easy because ZOS stands for ZeniMax Online to think that all of ZeniMax encompasses that. Now, ZeniMax Online is a game studio. It's a game studio that was made for ESO, just like ArenaNet is the game studio that basically was made for Guild Wars. There was a time when ArenaNet was working on other games besides Guild Wars, but those projects wound up getting canceled, so they're basically the Guild Wars studio now. So it's tempting to think that, you know, we're dealing with another Activision Blizzard here. We're not. We're not even dealing with another Blizzard. We're dealing with a studio made for ESO. I think ZeniMax Online should be rebranded. Put some kind of brand name on that studio so people stop thinking it's like ZeniMax. A little bit of brand confusion there. And maybe people stop treating it like it's Activision Blizzard when it's a different org structure and whatnot, versus, oh, Blizzard was really good with games. They had Warcraft, StarCraft, Diablo, etc. Later Overwatch. And Blizzard was already a big name, big organization, multiple IPs. ZOS is more in line with ArenaNet with Guild Wars, and nowadays Guild Wars 2. So, yeah, that's the thing with this stuff too. I mean, if you have a strong opinion, make sure you get to part 2 of the story like I've done. Of course, getting to part 2 of the story didn't really do very much. For, you know, what it is that I'm looking at here, but that's just the thing. So yeah, hopefully Mr. Lambert can realize what he is and what that means. And if he can't keep it professional on stream, or if he doesn't want to be essentially an unofficial complaint department, he doesn't want to fundamentally change his stream and his social media presences to get away from that and send a message, you know, I'm just trying to have fun here. I wouldn't even mention that he works at ZeniMax so people know who he is. Basically, don't use your Twitter as a LinkedIn. Save that stuff for LinkedIn for professional contacts. But you gotta, with the design, he has to, with the design of his stream, send the message that he's just he's just playing his game and enjoying it. It can't be a situation where people even think that this can be an unofficial complaint department to go complain to a dev through unofficial channels like that. Because, again, like I said last time, there's a big difference in the professionalism of what's going on here versus what you see in the forums of the green text. Because I can tell you, the attitudes that I've seen from like game updates and maintenance announcements from the ZeniMax and the ZOS employees on the forums are a lot more professional and a lot more explanatory without being condescending than a lot of the stuff I've seen from Blizzard over the years. So the green text I see on the forums gets a big thumbs up. If they can do something for Cyrodiil and PvP in general to kind of make it a little bit, you know, to kind of tune it up a little and whatnot, I think that we'll have a really good game on our hands. But what I really want to see is Elder Scrolls stop being the runt of the litter with these 3 games. Elder Scrolls should be as popular as Final Fantasy, maybe a little behind it, but not like this. Elder Scrolls Online should be a lot higher than this. It shouldn't be something that boat anchors you as a content creator either. Oh, you're into the more chill grown-up MMO instead of a bunch of people dancing in Limsa Laminza with glow sticks. So, and playing player instruments because you can do custom stuff like that. Hey, you know, what? I gotta drink my stuff correctly. how big is Guild Wars 2 right now? Why don't we check all of those? Let's go over to Twitch, mute the tab. We don't have to billboard any more streamers tonight. Hit mute site on this. Let me just go through these. I could probably just go to my front page and get, recommended games or browse. No, it's right there. Categories you think you'll like. Of course, I'm getting Ray's games like Valorant and Dota 2 and Internet Cafe Simulator in the mix, as well as Just Chatting. But I could probably find these games pretty easily. Let me just go to browse. So, World of Warcraft, 25 grand. Is Final Fantasy in here, or do I have to scroll for it? There it is. World of Warcraft is at 25 grand in concurrence. Final Fantasy, I just saw it. Where the heck is it? 17 grand. Elder Scrolls Online is at 1.7. Where's Guild Wars 2? Guild Wars 2 is at... See, Guild Wars 2, with an expansion coming out in February, is at 1.6k viewers. But only 605k followers, so it's smaller overall. But Guild Wars 2 has some design and some technical issues it has to work out, like being based on DirectX 9, and some of the features that, no MMO Trinity and stuff like that. It was cool in 2012, but it was iterated upon by games like ESO with its fuzzy Trinity at normal difficulty and stuff, and made a little better. So it was cool in 2012, but what Guild Wars 2 does is kind of not so special today. So, and let's turn blue as we just closed all the windows, went back to the background and stuff like that. But yeah, so yeah, personal social media, it cannot be you gotta get rid of it. You gotta get rid of the idea of it. It's not a thing anymore. The world is too wired. The world is too wired. It is impossible to have social media on the internet and expect it to stay under wraps. Between all the algorithms and other stuff that can happen, you really shouldn't even. You need to behave. Simple enough. And the more stuff you have going on, the more you need to behave. Sure, yeah, there'll be people trolling with sock puppet accounts that these rules apply less to until they slip, and they do that from time to time, like on Facebook. I still don't understand, and LinkedIn too, by the way. I still don't understand why people get all hot-headed on Facebook when you mouse over them and it's their first and last name, where they live and where they work, publicly visible because they didn't set their privacy settings right. Or on LinkedIn, where things are more out in the open, and you see people arguing politics in the LinkedIn feed. I'm like, aren't you supposed to use LinkedIn to help you get a job or something? Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to be starting giant arguments in LinkedIn comment sections of all places? So, yeah, I can tell you the general public is behind the 8 ball on social media and what to do with it. And so I hope I can be part of the solution rather than part of the problem with this. And so as the 2020s continue, especially as the pandemic dies down and we start seeing, more positive times come back instead of, the latest variant is out, how effective are the vaccines, As the decade continues, keep in mind, folks, that times change, things are different than they were 20 years ago. They're different than they were 10 years ago. I'm actually very seriously thinking about making a playlist on YouTube of 2010s music now, and we're only 2022. So, because things have changed quite a bit since then. And there's some things I don't hear, there's some stuff I don't hear on the radio anymore, but it's not old enough to be on some kind of retro station or decade station, like a 2000s station or something like that. Are there 2010 stations yet? We're only 2 years into the 2020s, so it might still be considered contemporary. This is good stuff. So, yeah. As we go into the decade, it's time to say goodbye to this whole idea of personal social media, and hopefully I can stop seeing these kinds of gaffes. So, content creators, there is no such thing as a personal Twitter, not in today's world. De jure, there can be. You can say it's your personal Twitter, but it's not going to get treated the same as an old school MySpace page with just you, your friends, and some flashy colors. Even with Space Hay being the way it is these days. Nah, perish the thought of personal social media is still being a thing anymore. It's impossible. You can say it is, but it won't be. There's no such thing as a personal Twitter. There's no such thing as a personal Twitch stream. There's no such thing as a personal YouTube channel. There's no such thing as a personal blog page. It will all be public. It will all reflect on you and what and who you're involved with. It will all go further than you think it will. And in algorithms, remember, if we're not talking about platforms, we can still talk search engines. Algorithm technology will make that even more the case. That what you think isn't going to go this far will, and probably further. It's time to say goodbye to the idea of personal social media. Understand everything you do with this stuff will have consequences one way or another. The world is too wired for that not to be the case. 7:53 at the Geek House. I might do some game streaming later tonight, but I have some things to work on, and I got to figure out with the cold snap tomorrow and a daytime high of only 15 degrees in Connecticut. Woo! When to do all the chores. Do I really want to be trying to do the laundry when it's only 5 degrees out? With a window open for the dryer to blow out of the house. I don't know. New England, whatever. No such thing as personal social media anymore, folks. Get ahead of the curve by conducting yourself likewise. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.